was a way to show respect to the audience and respect your own business. It was a way to protect it.
I am Mr. Richie Moon, and I'm Kayfabe Avenue, and I'm Kayfabe Focus.
It's Kayfabe Avenue. Ladies and gentlemen, heels and faces, casual wrestling fans, and all you smart marks, I am Kayfabe AJ.
And I'm Kayfabe Focus.
And this is Kayfabe Avenue, and this is the spotlight of Jericho, as you can see by, the many versions of Jericho throughout the years. So,
and plus we got the Paymaker Posse in the background.
Yeah, gotta rep the Paymaker Posse. But this week marks 30 years of Chris Jericho's career. 30 years, Craig.
30 years.
So, 30 years of Chris Jericho's career. They're doing a lot of highlights this week on AEW. They're doing an actual tribute show to Chris Jericho where he's actually facing Luther for the first time in America. So that's going to be dope, something to look forward to. And where do we start? Where do we start? But I guess the very beginning. So Chris Jericho was born Christopher Keith Irving on November 9th, 1970. And
son of Ted Irving.
Yes, son of Ted Irving, who was a hockey player for the New York Rangers at the time of his birth. They're from Canadian.
Which would make Chris Jericho a New Yorker, kind of, wouldn't it?
Well, no, Jericho is definitely a New Yorker. Yeah, no, Jericho is definitely a New Yorker. I think at one point they even hailed him from like Long Island, New York, or something like that when he debuted in WWE. But so Jericho himself, his name was actually inspired by the album Walls of Jericho by the band Halloween. He was gonna go by some weird, stupid name. I forgot what it was. It was like Chris something. It was definitely not Jericho, and they actually told him it was stupid, and he changed it on the fly and became Chris Jericho.
Chris Thundertits.
Chris Thundertits. I don't know about all that. But who is Jericho? Jericho basically is a wrestler, a rock star, a podcaster, a reality TV personality,
a game show host,
an author, an actor,
a dad,
a father, a champion. So, a man of many hats, a jack of all trades. Jericho definitely is, and his ring names say it all. He's gone by Corazón de León, Lionheart,
Armbar.
León de Oro, León Dos, Super Liger,
Armbar.
Y2J, the Ayatollah Rock and Roller,
Armbar.
the Alpha, the Man of 1,005 Holds, the Painmaker, the best in the world at what he does, the Demo God, the million viewer man, and most importantly, Le Champion, Chris Jericho. So, wow, 30 years, and those 30 years started in October 2nd, 1990. His career spanned the Indies in Canada, Japan, Mexico, ECW, WCW, WWF, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, AEW, all of the damn territories. But his first original start was in AWA, where he got his first intro to wrestling, actually being
Isn't that Jim?
He was in the ring. He was in the ring crew. AWA. I don't know.
No, I'm thinking about something else. I'm sorry.
No, AWA.
That's later.
Yeah, that's definitely later. AWA is a promotion out in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
But the people who inspired Chris Jericho were some of our favorites throughout the years: Owen Hart, HBK, Bret Hart, Ricky Steamboat. Those are the people that actually got him into wanting to wrestle, watching the AWA. And his first actual like foot in the door of wrestling was in Keystone Wrestling Alliance, and he was a part of the ring crew. So he was about 18, 19 years old at the time. And even though he pursued wrestling and pursued all these other things, he actually did graduate from college with a bachelor's in creative communications, which makes a lot of sense because he's, if you want to tack another name on to Chris Jericho, it should be like promo god. So, creative communications, that makes a lot of sense. So at age 19, he entered the Hart Brothers School of Wrestling, where he met his tag team partner, Lance Storm, on his first day. Together, they will form the Thrill Seekers. Both trained by Ed Langley and Brad Young. And after a short 2 months, he made his in-ring debut at Moose Hall. That's not a joke on Canada. It's really called Moose Hall in Ponoka, Alberta, Canada.
That's so Canadian.
And guess what his ring name was at the time? Of all things in Canada, his name was Cowboy Chris Jericho. I mean, he was only 19. I'll give him the leeway for that. He ended up becoming one of the greats.
How you gonna be a Canadian cowboy?
That's my question. How are you a Canadian cowboy? But
draw, buddy.
It's funny that you said draw, buddy, because his first match ended in a 10-minute draw against Lance Storm, his tag team partner. His buddy, his pal. So during this time he was in the indie circuit, he was touring with people that once again would become legends in the business. Lance Storm, Edge, Christian, Rhino, among others, hitting the Canadian circuit, the Canadian NWA, and the CRMW. A lot of indie promotions across Canada, as well as in '91, a year after he was introduced to wrestling and started his first actual matchups. He was traveling Japan with Lance Storm at Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling. From '92 to '95, he hit Mexico and was in CML, facing people like Ultimo Dragon, another legend, just rubbing shoulders with legends throughout his entire career, pretty much.
All of them.
He had an 11th-month reign as the NWA middleweight champion in December 1993. In '94, he was a part of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which was Jim Cornette's promotion, the controversial Jim Cornette. Facing the most notable tag team of Rock and Roll Express, which to this day is still rocking. They're still rolling. They're still out there. Tag team champions somewhere. Yeah, giving out Canadian destroyers. So from '94 to '96, he's at Wrestling and Romance Japan War. He became the War International Junior Heavyweight Champion in '95. He competed in the Super Junior Cup. He ended up losing it, but that's still a good notch in history. The Super Juniors still have their tournaments in Japan. That's something that still happens. He was the International Junior Heavyweight Tag Team with the partner Ghetto, and they were the inaugural International Junior Heavy Tag Team Champions. So, it won't be the first thing of many that he does
in New Japan.
In
Japan general.
In Japan, just everywhere. He's like a man of many firsts throughout his career, but
he's an international man of wrestling.
Pretty much. He's the Austin Powers of wrestling, is what you're pretty much trying to say. So we start getting our first introduction pretty much in America to Chris Jericho through ECW in 1995 and 1996. In his tenure through ECW, he became the ECW TV champion in '96. During his run there, he faced people like Taz, Sabu, RVD, Mick Foley, who was Cactus Jack at the time, Shane Douglas, the franchise, Too Cold Scorpio, all legends. This guy's rubbing shoulders with legends in the beginning of their career. So, you want to go back and check these highlights, most of them on the WWE Network. Definitely go back and check these matches.
Only $9.99.
Yeah, his his time at ECW pretty much gave him the mainstream attention that he was kind of seeking. He got the attention of WCW. But before we move on to WCW, do you have any moments that stand out to you in ECW at all?
I remember his match against Rey Mysterio. That was one of the greatest matches of two high flyers when they were young that anybody should probably look at.
In ECW? Yeah, I mean, people kind of forget that Ray went through there too.
Everybody basically went through there.
Yeah, I mean,
Very Saturn.
WCW just really stole half of ECW and built their mid card or lower card division. Chris Jericho was one of those people that made the exodus to WCW from ECW, along with the likes like Perry Saturn, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, among others. So
that Super Junior Cup that she was talking about, I think he faced the Pegasus Kid.
He ended up losing to the Pegasus Kid,
which was Chris Benoit.
Yeah, so that's another story for another day. Chris Benoit is another person who probably should get a spotlight. A long 10-year career as well, despite the tragedy. So I don't really have too many memories personally of the ECW version of Chris Jericho, but WCW, that's when I first got my first glimpse of Chris Jericho. And during his WCW run, he debuted August 26, 1996 on Nitro. And during his run, he became a WCW Cruiserweight Champion 4 times and a WCW TV Champ 1 time. My biggest memories of Chris Jericho in WCW has to be the list of 1,005 holds, where he just kept repeating armbar. His Goldberg call-outs leading to him getting eventually just squashed by Goldberg. What are some memories of him in WCW that you like remember and cherish?
The Jerichoholics and Ralphus, of course, which rest in peace to Ralphus. He died a couple years ago. His match with Julio Guerrero that conceived MJF basically. Let's see what else. All his pop references that he used to do always that that always popped the crowd and everything. What else?
What's that? Well, another thing that stood out to me in WCW that I love that segment when he felt like it was conspiracy that they took his title away from him.
And then he
went to like Capitol Hill and started protesting and campaigning.
He's like,
so
I am the real champion.
So Chris Jericho was still very young, but he was around the Japanese circuit. He already toured Mexico, did all this by the time he hit WCW. And I feel like this was just WCW was enough, like what he needed to get that main shine from WWF and to get that call up to WWF, and where he really, impacted his and like cemented the most of his career. That's where the bulk of his career. But WCW Jericho definitely has a bunch of hilarious moments, great matches. He was like, going crazy with Dean Malenko, going crazy with Benoit, Eddie,
Saturn.
Perry. The mid card division of WCW at that time would have
Billy
Kidman. Oh man.
Oh my god. You know what? We gotta watch some of these.
We gotta start. Yeah. I mean, I try to rewatch old WCW, but I couldn't because of the main event. But maybe I'll go back and watch all these moments with Jericho, Eddie, and all these guys that actually made WCW watchable in 2020. So so those were his highlights as far as WCW goes. And in between WCW, he ended up going to New Japan. During his stint of WCW, he went to New Japan. New Japan at that time had a cross promotion with WCW, so he spent like maybe a year over there, got called back to WCW, then eventually debuted for WWF in August 9, 1999. So what do you remember about his debut?
I remember the countdown clock.
The countdown clock. To this day, the countdown clock is probably one of the most historic debuts in WWE or probably even wrestling history.
Ever.
They took what, maybe like 6 months around there. You know, different segments on Raw. You'll see the timer counting down, and then you know you kind of forget about the clock after a while, and then the next thing you know, it's counting down right in the middle of a Rock promo. Chris Jericho debuts, interrupting The Rock in probably what formed one of the greatest promo segments of a debut, and like The Rock rebuttaling. Chris Jericho makes this long speech. He's here to save.
Ever be the same.
He makes this long speech about saving the WWF, that he's a rock star, he's the Millennium Man, and The Rock just says, "Who are you, Rudy Poo, coming out here and interrupting the Great One? It doesn't matter who you are." And the rest is history. The Rock would be somebody that Chris Jericho would definitely spar with, tag team on people with in his career. We just finished watching a promo, Jimmy Jack Jericho with the Iron Lung, and just awesome promos through his entire WWE, WWF career. And The Rock was definitely somebody that he, meshed well with and rebounded, verbiage against. They definitely had a great chemistry together, great moments. So let's go through his accomplishments. His WWE is basically the home to the majority of his career. The first major thing he did in his career was his feud with China for the Intercontinental Championship. And this feud would go back and forth between them, eventually involve Hardcore Holly. He would win the Intercontinental Championship twice during this rivalry. So what are your personal highlights of China and this feud between them?
I think China and Chris Jericho for the IC title, it was one of those great feuds in history, and and it involved lots of other people from what I remember, other than Hardcore Holly as well. I think it also included
Well, it had
at one point.
It had Jeff Jarrett. Like, they were feuding with other people defending the title, because at one point they ended up being co-champions.
But the main thing was that it was always focused on Chris Jericho and China.
Yeah. So, Jericho's first big rivalry in the WWE was with a woman, and at that time that was unheard of, and it was probably humbling. It was humbling for him. He speaks about it in many of his books. Like I said, he's an author as well. So he talks about his time with China, and he really didn't get along with her. She was big headed. She was backed by Triple H and D-Generation X, and those guys were like the top of the card in WWF at the time. So she had a lot of ego, a lot of political pull, like you just said. And, it was a rough time for him. I remember a point they actually had probably the greatest match of her career, one-on-one against each other. And Vince McMahon told him to, do what you do and treat her like you would a normal person. Like, so he gave her a great match. She ended up with a little shiner, and he ended up getting called green as shit by Vince McMahon. He got tore down. He got, ridiculed behind the scenes. He was, the politics was catching up. As far as China goes, it was definitely the beginning of a rough patch. His debut was really big against The Rock, and then over the next couple of months, it would kind of decline, and he would, end up just doing random things. The next big thing in his career was the triple threat match: Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle, WrestleMania 2000, winning his first ever European championship. Now, at this time, Kurt Angle was a double champion. He was IC champion and the European champion. Within this match, Benoit pins pins Jericho, wins the IC title. Jericho pins Benoit and wins the European title. Kurt Angle never loses. What do you remember about this match, WrestleMania 2000?
I remember that it was a great fucking match. I mean, it was basically two matches. You know,
in one.
At first you get the European, then you get the Intercontinental Championship, and you know it goes to show you the amount of workhorses that you had in WWE at the time. Because you had Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and Chris Jericho. Like I remember
in their prime, like
I remember.
Oh my god!
I remember they had like a spot on the top rope where they did like a double backdrop off the top rope, and that it was just like so iconic.
The funny thing, Chris Jericho is not a fan of this match. He felt it was one of his worst matches at that time. He's not proud of that match. And honestly, I remember this match for being one of my highlights of WrestleMania 2000 outside of the Dudley Boys, Hardys, Edge and Christian table match that they had. Other than a ladder match, or what it ended up being a TLC match before it was officially branded. But outside of that, my highlight of WrestleMania was that triple threat match between Chris Jericho, Benoit, and Kurt. So it's crazy to think that he was such a criticizer of his own work, that something that us as the fans appreciated as a great, high quality classic, he felt was horseshit.
It was bull crap, man.
So a few months down the line, we would get Triple H versus Chris Jericho on an episode of Monday Night Raw, where Chris Jericho actually beat him for the the WWF Championship, and the fans went nuts.
Yeah, I was hyped that night.
I was super hyped. I couldn't believe that he actually won.
So I was like.
But at the time, Triple H had the iron shovel, the golden shovel, and they reversed the decision, and that is his actual first title reign, but it was scratched from the history books. So WWE doesn't officially recognize Chris Jericho's first ever world championship.
They should.
Which they definitely should.
Because he won that shit clean.
He sure did. But it was a lot of controversy. That was the McMahon-Helmsley era.
And they forced Errol Hebner to reverse this decision, and then fired him right afterwards for doing it.
Yeah. So after that, the next highlight was his fourth reign as the Intercontinental Champion. And this was him versus Benoit, Royal Rumble 2001. This is a ladder match. And this is a match that when people ask me, what are your top maybe 5-6 matches of all time? This is one of the matches that I always personally shout out. You can go on Kayfabe Ave, Facebook group. Whenever that question's been asked, that's one of the matches that I always put down. Go back and watch that. Royal Rumble 2001 ladder match. These guys were the top of technical wrestling in wrestling period at that time. Chris Benoit and Jericho, they showed how you can have a technical, hard-hitting match with a ladder without doing all the what they say, high spot, the monkey.
I mean, let's not
the spot monkey.
Let's not say that, because Chris Benoit took a huge.
I mean, he does suicide. I mean, that was he.
That was the cause. Let's be like that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, that was Chris Benoit's move. He used to do diving headbutts all the time, but I mean, nobody told him to do it off a ladder. But great match. Go watch that. This was his fourth Intercontinental title reign and one of my favorite matches in history. And Chris Jericho was involved. Then his first tag team title, ironically, was with Chris Benoit. They won him in a gauntlet match at Judgment Day, the Judgment Day pay-per-view 2001. This is also one of my favorite like obscure tag teams, like impromptu tag teams that had a short run, but had an amazing set of matches. The Gauntlet match, they proved that they were the best because they fought almost every tag team in the WWF at that point. Then they ended up winning the titles. They go on to have another one of my favorite matches of all time, TLC 3, which was on SmackDown. Chris Jericho ended up holding his own for his team. Chris Benoit was injured, ends up coming back later on in the match, injured and all. They ended up winning, retaining the titles. Ended up having a great rivalry against the two-man power trip of Stone Cold and Triple H. This was a great little spot in Jericho's history that I really loved. I wish that tag team would have went a little further. I think him and Chris Benoit had amazing chemistry.
I think they had two finishes that connected well together as a double team.
Ooh, the Lion Tamer, the Walls of Jericho, crossface. Yeah, we actually used to do that when we used to play wrestling in the fucking park. But after that tag team run, he ended up winning the WCW title versus The Rock. This was his actual first recognized championship reign, winning the WCW title against The Rock.
During the Invasion storyline.
During the Invasion, which WWF bought WCW. So this was a WCW title recognized in WWE. He ends up going back and forth with The Rock with that title. He ends up winning a second tag team title, ironically, with The Rock. This was short-lived and ended up leading to him and The Rock, along with Kurt Angle and Stone Cold, facing each other in a series of matches at Vengeance 2001, leading to Chris Jericho becoming the first ever undisputed heavyweight champion, unifying the WCW title and the WWF title.
The first ever undisputed Le Champion.
So, just to be clear, there's been an undisputed championship, an actual title called the Undisputed Championship, but there has only been one undisputed champion in the history of wrestling, and it is Chris Jericho, WWF and WCW champion. Any other undisputed championship after him, is it really undisputed?
You can't really say that anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of promotions out there that have a world title now, so they're not really undisputed.
And as far as WWF and the main top of wrestling, the big promotions in wrestling, I won't really count the indie circuits, at this point, as far as undisputed champions. So next up, we have him as undisputed champion, going against Triple H at WrestleMania 19. WrestleMania 18.
And they stole the show with that match.
They definitely stole the show. This wasn't highlighted. They didn't have major titles changes or anything like that. He didn't win the title, but WrestleMania 17 after WrestleMania 2000. His first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 2000. WrestleMania 17, top to bottom, amazing. But he had an amazing match against William Regal. Have to go check that out. Hard hitting, another one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. But at WrestleMania 19, he's going against Triple H, the returning Triple H from injury. He had missed the invasion angle. This time, the person that he used to berate and cut the most greatest promos of all time against, Stephanie McMahon, was actually in his corner. Stephanie was the second woman in his career that would kind of skyrocket him and propel him up the card, leading to him actually winning the Undisputed Championship and being that top guy for WWE. So unfortunately he ends up losing to Triple H,
of course,
but becoming the first ever Undisputed Champion ended up making him the fourth Grand Slam champion in the original format, meaning before the draft. So before there were two world championships in the WWE. The next up was a fifth IC title run reign against RVD. Then he has a third tag team title run with Christian. Now, his partnership with Christian, I did like these two mesh well together. Very funny, and both of them guys were road dogs.
Especially when they brought in Trish Stratus and everything.
Yep. So that's a little bit more down the line. But the next Mania match was Jericho versus HBK at WrestleMania 19. What do you remember about this match?
I remember Jericho got his ass beat by HBK.
Well, he ended up losing to HBK, but the storytelling of this match, this is a match that you actually have to go back and just appreciate, like for ring psychology, for technical ability, for showmanship, all of that. Like, you think Chris Jericho at the end is humbling himself and praising HBK, and then ends up kicking him in the nuts and solidifying himself as a heel. Chris Jericho is one of those guys that he can flip the script on people. He can be a heel, he can be a face, and no matter what he's doing, we love him for it. So yeah, he ends up with the third tag team title. Christian ends up with Jericho versus HBK at Mania 19. Ends up winning his sixth Intercontinental Championship, again winning against RVD October 27, 02. Then that leads to what you were alluding to before, the Trish Stratus and Lita situation where Chris Jericho and Christian end up making a little wager for $1 Canadian who can sleep with their girl first. So Chris was with Trish, and Christian was talking to Lita, and he ends up falling in love with Trish Stratus. And then next thing you know, Christian turned on Jericho, and Trish Stratus was now messing with Christian. So that was the big story behind their feud. Great matchup, great story. It's definitely a good WrestleMania moment. Definitely go back and check it out. That show was hilarious.
Canadian.
$1 Canadian. Then we have
Canada
that was WrestleMania 20. Then we have his seventh Intercontinental title reign, which is the record breaker at this point, beating Jeff Jarrett's old record in 1999. He attained the record beating Christian in Unforgiven 2004. Same year, like I said, Chris Jericho is a man of many firsts. He was in the first ever Elimination Chamber this year. He was the creator and involved in the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 21. The Money in the Bank ladder match will go on to be a mainstay of WrestleMania. We would probably a staple for sure of WrestleMania. I think they had maybe 6 consecutive years of Money in the Banks on WrestleMania, which was the concept was pretty much the briefcase hangs above the ring. You get the ladder, you grab the briefcase. The person who wins gets a contract that you could cash in anytime, any place against any champion of your choosing. So that concept ended up becoming its own pay-per-view in Money in the Bank, and we see it every year. So kudos to Chris Jericho. Even though he's not in WWE anymore, he still has a legacy behind every year. So after WrestleMania, he's in a feud with Cena. He has the You're Fired match, August 22nd of 2005. Now, my recollection of this was him getting tossed, like getting carried away up the Titantron and screaming at Cena and like pretty much like begging to not get fired. This will be Chris Jericho's first hiatus of many, but during this time, he became the author. He started working for VH1, doing the best week ever and all these highlight shows. He started hosting shows. He started doing his band Fozzy and touring with them. Fozzy at that point was just a cover band with they all had gimmick names and they dressed like 70s, 80s rock stars and super over the top. over the years, Fozzy would actually become a legitimate band and create their own music. And one of their biggest hits is Chris Jericho's Judas, which is his music in AEW that he comes out to. The fans sing him to the ring.
What a time.
The only champion I know that gets sung to the ring every time. Like, his reign was amazing.
That's not HBK.
Right. So he had a long stint. He was gone for 2 years and change, coming back September 24, 2007 with the Raw Save Us promos. What do you remember about the Save Us promos?
I remember wondering who is coming back and what is this hacker storyline that we're getting and everything.
So it was like a Matrix, like computer language dropping from the screen, blue and white lettering. Every week it'll, the coding switch ended up being Save Us 222. You ended up this caused people to do like a massive riddle search and clue hunt, and people were trying to solve clues every week. This became he became the WWE's Riddler for weeks before his debut.
And they figured out that it was the code was his debut of his first. I think it was in Raw.
It was his Raw debut against The Rock, and then it ended up spelling Save Us Y2J, and
everybody already figured it out. So everybody's like Y2J, Y2J.
So during this return, he changed up his look, shortened his hair, the first glittery jacket with the lights that light up in the dark. This is like the first major gimmick change, one of many throughout his career. Chris Jericho is a chameleon. He can change with the times. He evolves with any situation. So this was the first of that.
I could definitely give you
it. So we move on to his 8th Intercontinental title reign, March 10, 2008 versus Jeff Hardy. And then down the line, we get Suit Jericho, world champion Suit Jericho.
The best in the world at what I do, because I'm going to talk slow and use big words, and hopefully the Miz later on would eventually steal my whole swagger and everything.
The Miz was definitely inspired by Chris Jericho's heel work during that time for sure. But another heel turn, another gimmick change. Suit Jericho was the man. Like this was
he was the king of his world.
During his Undisputed Championship run and his WCW Championship run, I don't feel like he was taken serious as a legitimate world champion. We had Stone Cold, we had The Rock, we had Triple H, Taker, Kurt. We had all these guys in huge positions, and his reign wasn't taken as serious. Chris Jericho in the suit, talking slow and cutting his promos and getting people on their last nerve. He actually solidified himself as that top contender, the main event. And this reign was probably the first time that actually everyone appreciated him as champion. During this time as Suit Jericho, he would win his 3rd and 4th world championship reigns. The first one being in the championship scramble match, which another first. And
was it not the same championship scramble match? No, I don't think about something
else. There was 2 more championship scramble matches after that, but we need more of that. I miss those kind of gimmick matches. Maybe he should bring that to AEW. The second one was at the 4th reign. He won at Raw 800 against Batista in a steel cage match. I remember that. That was actually a great match. Next highlight was Mania 25, Y2J versus the legends of Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat with Mickey Rourke. What do you remember about this match?
I remember Ricky the Dragon Steamboat whipping his ass.
He ended up winning that match. What are you talking about?
But Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was whipping his ass.
Nah.
Though.
he ended up making Ricky the Dragon have one of his best matches in fucking like 20 years. Not only that, brought Ricky the Dragon Steamboat out of retirement, ended up having a rivalry with him and having probably the best one-on-ones with someone who was clearly in like their 40s or their 50s or 60s at that time. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, was in WrestleMania 3. So imagine at this point, it's WrestleMania 25. And 22 years later, he's fighting Chris Jericho in his prime. So what I remember from this was going in, Mickey Rourke had a movie out called The Wrestler. So the actual story going in was Chris Jericho was going to actually fight Mickey Rourke at WrestleMania. But since he's an actor and his agents were concerned in insurance issues, they actually brought in the legends to defend Mickey Rourke over the weeks. And that led to him, fighting and beating all of them. But the big WrestleMania moment that came out that match was Mickey Rourke punching the shit out of Chris Jericho after that.
Yeah, that's definitely a highlight.
We move
that
on.
Was also funny too.
Yeah, it was definitely funny. Chris Jericho does serious, does funny, does it all. Seriously, does it all. We move on to his 9th Intercontinental title run versus Mysterio at Extreme Rules Online. And this 9th reign, this record still stands to this day. From 2009 to 2020, no one has achieved 9 Intercontinental title runs. The only person who has come close is The Miz with, I believe, either 7 or 8 championship reigns, Intercontinental championship reigns. So just another notch to the legendary career that is Chris Jericho. Next up, we have Y2J, Chris Jericho, and Edge winning the Unified Tag Team titles. Edge ends up getting injured legitimately and getting replaced by The Big Show, and they formed the tag team of Jericho.
And then they switched titles with, I forgot who it was. But that's Show Miz.
Yeah, so
it went back to Jericho Show again. I think it was like they were playing hot potato.
No, so what happened? Pretty much, Y2J ended up kind of like moving on to the World Championship, and Miz kind of replaced Jericho in that role in Jericho, and it became, I think, Show Miz. Yeah, Show Miz. So, stemming from the beginning of that that Unified Tag Team title win, during the promo replacing Edge, he actually berated Edge for even getting injured. So this led to the Elimination Chamber 2010 and his 5th World Championship versus his 5th World Championship, and then eventually fighting Edge at WrestleMania 26, culminating from this Unified Tag Team storyline. So you got any highlights about WrestleMania 26 and his storyline with Edge?
Honestly, I don't think I've seen that one. I think I was on a hiatus from wrestling at that time.
So my thought on this WrestleMania, I actually thought Chris Jericho was gonna lose going in. Edge being the face coming back after returning from injury, Chris Jericho actually pulled off the win. I mean, it didn't last long. He lost it a week later to Jack Swagger after Jack Swagger cashed in the Money in the Bank on him. So, which ironically is the Money in the Bank that he created. It was cashed on him, and he ended up losing the world title a week later. But yeah, I thought he was going to lose going into that Mania. Then we have a brief tag team with Miz. People probably don't even realize that.
Jeremiz, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah.
And then in September 27, 2010, Orton ends up punting Chris Jericho to explain his departure. And this was the last time in history that Chris Jericho would be full-time, nonstop. He will re-debut 2 years later as Silent Chris Jericho. What do you remember about Silent Jericho? This man trolled the crowd for a month straight. Will come out, act like he's going to say something, go shh, and then leave. Just straight up leave the fans hanging, and we've been waiting a month for this guy to speak on his return. He's the ultimate troll. I swear, he is the ultimate troll. So this leads into him switching his gimmick again after being Silent Jericho. He becomes the best in the world at what he does. And this leads to WrestleMania 28 versus CM Punk. Were you watching at that point? Do you remember CM Punk versus Chris Jericho?
Was this the CM Drunk storyline, or was it?
This was
this was before the CM Drunk storyline.
This was the storyline of This was the storyline that he was saying his father was a drunk, and he has a smashing the liquor bottle on CM Punk's head,
and then he slips on it.
Yeah, he slipped and bust his ass on Raw.
And then they try to put him in say that CM Punk got drunk at a fish and chip spot too.
So that was actually the CM Drunk storyline, because he was trying to say that he was gonna inherit his father's transgressions or whatever the case may be. But this was during the summer of Punk. This was during that big championship era of Punk. So Chris Jericho helping put him over, because the storyline between them was Chris Jericho was the best in the world at what he does, and CM Punk was the best in the world. So Chris Jericho took offense to that while he was away, and the catalyst for him returning was to take CM Punk down that notch and put some respect on Chris Jericho's name. So we have a few months of matches, and then we have more Fozzy disappearances. Like I said, he wouldn't be full-time again with WWE at this point. He will return again January 27, 2013, after a 5-month hiatus, and this will lead to Fandango versus Jericho, Mania 29. What do you remember about this?
This was the most useless put over match of all time.
But
at least the Fandango got over.
The Fandango dance, right?
It was the first case of the Dirty Dango.
This match, it was the most useless put over of somebody in history, because it didn't go anywhere. They instantly started burying Fandango months later. But this is a testament to the person that Chris Jericho is. He's willing to put the younger talent over. All Jericho really wants is something to sink his teeth in, something to be creative, something to have fun with while he's wrestling. So while it was a useless put over, you gotta, tip your hat off that he would even put somebody over like Fandango, who's at that point fresh. He was like maybe a month, 2 months in to his career at that point with WWE. So after that, he leaves, he goes, he comes back, and he becomes House Show Jericho, which was a period of time. He literally had like a year contract, but he will only do appearances on house shows. No Raws, no SmackDowns, no pay-per-views. So literally the people who showed up to these small events were getting treated to Jericho.
Wasn't this around the time he got suspended for kicking the Brazilian flag?
Yeah, he ends up. Yeah, he did get suspended for like a month and change. He's super heel. Like, who would have knew the country would have took so much offense that he would have got locked up, and they would have banned him for a month. But anyways, he comes back January 4th, 2016. He does a semi full-time schedule, and this leads to Styles versus Chris Jericho at Mania 32. They had a little tag team bout. It was Y2AJ for like a week. They end up.
They even had shirts, and then for no reason, because they broke up the same. They debuted the shirts.
Oh yeah, they did break up the.
It's like, well, you didn't even give the chance for the shirts to sell.
So, my thought about AJ Styles Jericho Mania 32 was, did AJ Styles lose to Jericho? I was actually surprised he won that one. I thought they would have put Styles over. That was Styles' first ever WrestleMania, stemming off of his like 50-something minute debut in the Royal Rumble. So I thought they were gonna like pull the trigger on give AJ Styles his first ever win at Mania.
I guess they didn't want none.
They didn't want none. I guess they didn't want to give AJ too much too soon. But after that, we will get another gimmick change to the stupid idiots and the list of Jericho. This will lead to Kevin Owens and him tagging, him being the United States champion, Owens being the Universal champion. They're best friends. This was probably the best storyline in WWE that entire year, culminated at a match at WrestleMania 33. Kevin Owens had to drop the title to freaking Goldberg, of all freaking people, and then their match wasn't even close to the main event. Like, they didn't give Jericho justice. They didn't give Kevin Owens justice. Their storyline was the best that year. Should have had the title on the line. Should have been for the Universal Championship. They dropped the ball, and this actually was the catalyst for Jericho to start seeking other options, to start looking for other avenues to be creative in different promotions. So that was Chris Jericho's last WrestleMania. He would then, a year later, go to New Japan Pro Wrestling, November 5th, 2017, as the Alpha Chris Jericho, which will culminate in a match with Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom 12. I know you have a lot to say about Wrestle Kingdom 12, at least, right? What do you remember about Wrestle Kingdom 12? Chris Jericho, Omega.
Remember everything. I remember Chris Jericho jumping Kenny Omega after the match with Okada, and basically culminating in the match with Wrestle Kingdom and everything. It was a crazy thing because nobody thought that Chris Jericho would automatically just show up in New Japan Pro Wrestling at any point in time. So, it was like a big page turner for everybody. And then, it gave a lot of eyes to New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Not only that, we got to look at the context of where New Japan Pro Wrestling was at this point. They had the Bullet Club. They had the Elite. Before AEW existed, New Japan had all these guys that would revolutionize the business together. Chris Jericho jumping to New Japan after feeling like creatively stifled in WWE. Just getting that, it was just to dip his feet into something, He ended up loving it and getting that creative boost. And he realized there's a whole world of wrestling. He's literally said it on his podcast multiple times that he finally woke up. Like, all these years he thought, WWF, after owning WCW and pretty much killing the business competitively, that there was really nothing besides WWE. Once he went to New Japan, it opened his eyes, and it will be the catalyst for the rest of his career going forward. So that match was actually a fucking classic. You have to go out your way to see Kenny Omega versus Y2J. This is top notch Kenny Omega. This is Omega his prime. This is the Omega that people wish was in AEW right now. Go out your way to see it. His next feud in New Japan was for the IWGP IC title at Dominion 2018 against Naito, which he ends up winning. So technically, Chris Jericho is a 10-time Intercontinental champion, but of course WWE is not going to recognize a New Japan championship. And speaking of WWE not recognizing a New Japan champion, besides the Kevin Owens WrestleMania thing, Chris Jericho actually pitched to Vince McMahon, I'm the Intercontinental champion of New Japan. Why don't we have a cross-promotional thing at WrestleMania? You're Intercontinental champion versus me. It'll be good for both of us. Vince shut that down completely and, wasn't open to it at all. That rang a bell.
Oh, pal, that's not good shit.
Yeah, that rang a bell in Chris Jericho's head. And, next thing you know, his ties with WWE kind of split after that. He did one kind of one-off appearance at a reunion.
And then asked if they could put NXT on the Cruiser Jericho, and they said no.
Yeah, we didn't get to that yet. That's 2 notches after. But we have, after Dominion, we have him against Naito at Wrestle Kingdom 13, a year after his debut in New Japan. He actually lost to Naito. Naito will go on to become a double champion after beating Chris Jericho for that for the Intercontinental Championship. But I think he actually boosted Naito. I think he's actually a reason why Naito even won the Gold Rush tournament and became a double champ to begin with. So another great rivalry you want to go out your way. Great promos.
In the middle of that rivalry was also him feuding with Evil too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about his feud with Evil.
Yeah.
So he did good things in New Japan. He wasn't there all the time, but when he showed up, his appearances actually mattered, and it was the talk of the wrestling world at that time. So the next thing up was September 1st, 2018. We have a mystery person at the end of a match pop up in mask. He looks like Pentagon.
Is Pentagon Jr.?
Pulls off his mask. Is Chris Jericho at All Out. At All In, actually. All In. The first ever event that Cody, the Young Bucks, put together. This was the catalyst for AEW's creation. Basically, they told Cody Rhodes, you guys cannot sell out. Being indie people, you guys cannot sell out a 10,000 seat stadium. Cody Rhodes took up on that challenge along with the Young Bucks and the rest of the elite. They made this amazing show. Chris Jericho added his historic presence to the show, and the rest is history. The next month, we have the creation of the Cruiser Jericho, like Focus mentioned, where he had people from all promotions. We had Impact, we had Ring of Honor, we had New Japan, a few people who dabble in New Japan. He reached out to WWE to have NXT stars. Vince refused, and Vince's refusal to create with Chris Jericho would eventually lead to January 8th, 2019, the creation of All Elite Wrestling. Chris Jericho comes out and solidifies the company as the first major star of the brand. What do you remember about that?
I remember WWE had a show with Jacksonville. They decided to announce the new wrestling show in Jacksonville right there when Vince was in town.
I remember this.
And there was a whole bunch of fireworks and everything. And,
do you remember the funny story that came out of that night? So basically, everyone went to the AEW rally. They got the AEW shirts and merch. Then they went down the block to the WWE show, and half of them were getting banned for wearing AEW gear at a WWE event. So that's not only the start of AEW, but the start of the pettiness with WWE and competition in wrestling again. Chris Jericho is the highest paid wrestler in AEW. He deserves it. He definitely is a big part of the creation of that company. Without Jericho, I'm pretty sure that company wouldn't exist in the way it does now, with the amount of fans and the amount of prestige that's getting put into AEW at this point.
He gives it that it factor.
7 months later, we have All Out, August 31st, 2019, and we have Chris Jericho becoming the first ever AEW World Champion.
Le Champion.
Finally crowning himself Le Champion.
Le Champion.
Now, what can we say about Chris Jericho in AEW? What are your favorite highlights of Jericho in AEW?
I think one of my favorite highlights in Jericho is all the promos, man. Like anytime he gets on a microphone, it's just pure gold. You know, whether it's with Santana Ortiz or Sammy Guevara or Matt Hardy, it's always funny with them. You know, or even feuding with Vanguard One.
Yeah. Jericho, the first AEW champion, he the highest paid wrestler in the company. He could easily be only rubbing shoulders with the top guys. He's putting people over like Jungle Boy. He's putting people over like Orange Cassidy. He's putting people over like Luther tomorrow night on 30 Years of Jericho, AEW Dynamite. He's still in that mindset at 49. He's still in that mindset that I can put over the new generation, and I can still contribute to this business. Don't forget, Chris Jericho still has that rematch that he never got for the AEW Championship. So who knows? We might add yet another championship reign
Two-time
to
champ.
Chris Jericho's long legacy. So before we wrap up the show, I want to run down the list of accomplishments throughout his entire career.
The list of Jericho accomplishments?
The list of Jericho. So, one-time AEW champ, one-time CRMW and NAHWC champion, two-time CRMW North American Tag Champions with Lance Storm.
Armbar.
One-time CMLL Middleweight Champion, one-time ECW TV Champion, one-time IWA Champion,
Armbar.
one-time New Japan Intercontinental Champion, four-time WCW Cruiserweight Champion, one-time WCW Champion, first ever Undisputed Champion,
Armbar.
three-time World Heavyweight Champion, two-time WCW Champion, nine-time Intercontinental Champion, two-time United States Champion, one-time European Champion, one-time Hardcore Champion, seven-time WWE Tag Team Champion. He's the fourth Grand Slam champ. He's the ninth Triple Crown champion. He's the one-time War Junior Heavyweight champ, the one-time War International champ, and one-time WWA Tag Champ, with a total of 41 titles in his entire career, 7 of those being heavyweight championships, and to this day holds the record for 9, and if you include New Japan Pro Wrestling, 10 Intercontinental Championships. Chris Jericho is a legend, whether he's in AEW, WWE, whatever he plans to do, Chris Jericho is going to be the best at it, whether he's podcasting, hosting, whatever it is.
Or being the GOAT.
I look forward to the next decade of Jericho. Maybe at his 40th, we'll have another recap, revisit, and hopefully in another 10 years, we're still celebrating the long career of Chris Jericho. Do you have any last things you want to say about Chris Jericho, AEW, anything in particular?
I just want to say, once you see this whole episode in its entirety, that you will never, ever
be the same again. But we can do this all day. Focus, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, which is username is taken try another. You can look me up on my OnlyFans, Kayfabe Focus, where I just post fans. Just fans.
He only posts fans on OnlyFans.
That's it.
You can find me at Kayfabe_AJ on Instagram. You can find us at Kayfabe Avenue at the Facebook group. Join us, like, share your thoughts, give us your comments, your feedback. Like, share, subscribe our YouTube channel at Kayfabe Avenue. Follow the Twitter at Kayfabe Ave. And, like we said, tune in, like, share, subscribe. If you like the podcast, if you enjoy our show, please donate on the Anchor page.
We need the money.
We could use the money, but we will also try to contribute more shows, give you more content. Once again, this was Kayfabe Focus. I'm Kayfabe AJ. This was Kayfabe Avenue. This was the Spotlight of Jericho. Chris Jericho.
Pop the bubbly.
Pop the bubbly. And take us home.
If you smell what Y2J